Before I get started with the sermon, I just want to, I don't usually point out visitors because a lot of visitors don't necessarily want to be pointed out. But I just want to recognize Larry Carr, and I forgot your name. Chris. Larry and Chris are with us this morning, and I met Larry when he was running for Bonnie Pinnell's seat, and I really appreciated him right away. And I told him this morning, you know, often politicians will come through and they'll say, "Oh, Pastor, well, I'm going to come on Sunday," and not a single one ever has. And Larry didn't make me that promise, but here he came. So I just want to say, Larry, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the work that you do in your district, and I've really been impressed by your spirit and what you brought to the job. So thank you very much, Larry. So after the service, make sure you stop and shake his hand and get to know him a bit. Every couple of months, a friend of mine asks me to help him teach a class over at the Art Institute. And it's a class mostly of just kids, most of whom don't know anything about the church or Jesus or the Bible or anything. And I teach a class about, the name of the class is Myth, Ritual, and Magic, and I talk about the Christian myth. Now, when I say that, you might say, oh, but the word myth really has two definitions. It's both it can sometimes mean a story that isn't true, but it can sometimes mean the bigger story of the universe. And I often share with the students in that class a little bit about the Egyptian origin myths and Babylonian origin myths, and then I talk about Genesis 1 and 2. Because if you read the Bible, one of the things that you learn in Genesis 1 and 2 is that this is the story of the world. And for almost every other civilization in human history, the world begins with a story. And the story locates us. And the story tells us who we are. And not just that there's stuff here, but what we are for and what life is for. Our civilization currently is one that doesn't have a creation myth. We have a story of material origins, but many, many people say the universe doesn't tell us anything, so we can add whatever meaning we want to it. And as every year, usually around Easter time, the Freedom from Religion Foundation will put forward their billboards and say, we don't need a myth, we don't need a story. We are happy, we are productive, we are moral, and we enjoy the wonder of the universe, and that's all we really need. Part of what's difficult, however, is that human beings, it seems to be, are by nature distrustful. And one of the things that we discover is that trying to figure out who us is not an easy thing. Picked up this story in this book that I read a couple of months ago, and it appeared in some of the sermons. In the language of the Dinka people of the Sudan, Dinka simply means people. People who are not Dinka are not people. The Dinka's bitter enemies are the Nuer. What does the word Nuer mean in Nuer language? It means original people. Thousands of miles from the Sudan Desert, in the frozen ice lands of Alaska and the northeastern Siberia, the Yupiks. What does Yupiks mean in Yupik language? It means real people. Anybody know the Navajo word for Navajo? Dine. They call themselves the Dine. And you know what Dine meant? The people. And so if you were Dine, you were the people, and if you were not Dine, you were not the people. And you see, this has gone on throughout human history, and as one people met another people, they all had these different origin stories, and as they mixed, they would just try to have to figure out what to do. And so you'd have empires rise, and The Greek empires rose, and so if you were a Greek, you were a Greek. If you weren't a Greek, anybody know what you were? A barbarian. And if you were a Jew, did you know what you were a Jew? But if you weren't a Jew, did you know what you were? A Gentile. And actually you find this all throughout human history, that we look at our own little group and we say, we're the people, and then you look at other groups and you have to think of a different word for them, and in almost every case, the word that you had for the other was them. You know, last week or a week before, someone dumped a load of stuff in the parking lot, did some illegal dumping. You know how we talk about the people who do that? You know what we call them? Those people. They dumped the load. They did this. So there's them and us. One of the strange things that happened with the growth of Christianity in the Roman Empire was that they didn't really know what to call Christians, because everyone at that time had their religious group set aside by their different nationalities. So you have the Jews and the Jewish God, you have the Babylonians and the Babylonian gods, you have the Greeks and the Greek gods, and the Romans and the Roman gods. And what starts to happen in the city of Antioch, and you can read about this in the book of Acts, is that Jews and Greeks and Romans and Phoenicians and Scythians all start meeting together, and everyone said, what do we call them? And so someone came up with the idea. Do you know what they started calling them there? Christians. Because they didn't know what else to call them. Now, we are in a time when, so once you had Christians, it's like, oh good, we've transcended this word problem. But then you had Christians and non-Christians. And then you had believers and infidels, and so we keep having this difficulty where we're here in this silent universe. We immediately assume that my people are good and right and safe, and other people are scary and dangerous, and we keep bumping into these barriers, and what we really want is to have some way to have everyone be on the same page and get along together. A couple of weeks ago, David Brooks wrote an interesting piece in the New York Times called his Moral Bucket List. And basically, the piece is similar to just about 3 chapters into his book now. It's a really excellent book, The Road to Character. And I'm from New Jersey, and so I read the New York Times quite a bit, actually. And David Brooks is one of my favorite columnists, and I enjoy his writing. David Brooks has been a columnist that has paid a lot of attention to morals and ethics and how we treat one another. And here in his book and in his column, A Moral Bucket List, I'll read a little bit about it. About once a month, I run into a person who radiates an inner light. These people can be in any walk of life. They seem deeply good. They listen well. They make you feel funny and valued. You often catch them looking at other people as they do so, their laugh is musical and their manner is infused with gratitude. They are not thinking about what wonderful work they are doing. They are not thinking about themselves at all. When I meet such a person, it brightens my whole day. I confess I often have a sadder thought. It occurs to me that I've achieved a decent level of career success, but I have not achieved that. I have not achieved that generosity of spirit or that depth of character. A few years ago, I realized that I wanted to be a bit more like those people. I realized that that if I wanted to do that, I was going to have to work harder to save my own soul. I was going to have some sort of moral adventures that produced that kind of goodness. I was going to have to be better at balancing my life. Brooks will go on in the book to talk about resume virtues and eulogy virtues. And he'll note that in our context, we encourage kids to grow their resume virtues so that they can get a good job and that they can succeed and that they can climb the ladder. But he mentions that As a culture, we have very much lost the eulogy virtues. And whenever we finally get around to Neil's memorial service, we will talk about Neil. And we won't talk about how much insurance he sold. Some of you might not even know he sold insurance. When you call Neil when he was selling insurance, I would call him and I would talk on the phone, and then the phone would ring, and Nancy Roos knows this because she used to help him in the office sometimes. Someone else would call to buy insurance, and Neil would pick up the phone and say, "Hi, this is Neil. I'm on the other line. Can I call you back?" And I'd say, "Neil, we're just talking. Don't you want to sell insurance?" And he'd say, "I hate selling insurance." And then when I got to the church, I said, "Oh, okay, Neil, you're the only insurance guy I know in California. Why don't I need car insurance? I need, insurance for the house." And he said, "No, you don't want to buy our car insurance." I said, "Why not?" He said, "Because we're too expensive. We're more expensive than the other guys." I said, "But Neil, I'd rather give you my business." He said, "No, I'm not going to sell you insurance because right now our prices aren't good. Go buy from someone else." And I said, "Neil, what kind of insurance salesman are you?" And so right there you see the resume virtues that would say, "Make the sale," and the eulogy virtues that said, "No, I care about you. Buy from someone else. I care about you." So David Brooks recognizes this, and David Brooks, in the context of his writing career, what he wants to do is he wants us to recognize character and virtue. Now, this is pretty common in our society right now, and because we have ethnic differences and religious differences and differences of tradition, we try to transcend these differences by using generic words. We want to use love and faith and hope and character and justice and kindness and mercy and goodness and peace. And these are all good things, because if I'm a Christian Reformed pastor talking to an atheist or a Muslim or a Buddhist, we might not be able to agree on all of the details, and so we tend to then go to generic words and say, well, this will help us agree with each other and get along. C.S. Lewis, in fact, in his appendix in his book, The Abolition of Man, in fact, looked at all of these different moral laws from the Hebrew scriptures and the Babylonians and Confucius and said, throughout human history, there is actually pretty wide agreement on what is good. You shall not kill. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. These are things that many, many cultures affirm. Can't we just use generic words, and won't that be good enough? The difficulty is that, in fact, this idea has been tried hundreds of times throughout civilizations. The Greeks tried it in elevating virtue. The Hindus tried it. And if you go to India today, you'll see all kinds of spiritual and generic religious words painted all over the place. And the reason they do that is, again, to try to transcend that Daniel and Greg and a number of other people are around. And Daniel often sleeps outside the door here of my office as he's trying to get into the mental hospital. Well, and Daniel sometimes makes a mess, and Daniel will get into conflicts with people, sometimes with